Hello, and welcome to Thinking Out Loud. I'm your co-host, Nathan Rittenhouse.
And I'm your co-host, Cameron McAllister.
Today, we want to delve more deeply into one of the features of Thinking Out Loud together as a ministry. If you think broadly about the types of activities that we're involved in, a whole range of different components to what we do. But one of the features that we think is a special feature of Thinking Out Loud is the together part of that. And for those of you who have been listening along for the last 270-some episodes, many of you have said, hey, you know what? You and Cameron have a fun relationship and you get to think together, but we don't always have a way to participate in that. And so today, when we're going into the depths of what TOL Connect is, we want to talk about some of what it is, where it came from, why it's there, how it can be used, and how you can be part of the continuing conversation around some of the ideas and topics that get started on Thinking Out Loud, the podcast, or if you see us live in an event, church or another ministry opportunity organization conference or something, and want to keep in touch and follow along sort of behind the scenes, you'll recognize that quickly, if you've been following us for any time, that Cameron and I don't do a whole lot on social media. And this is a platform for us to be more involved with you, the listener, that's out of the spotlight of the more traditional, always irritating your notification bell pockets, buttons in your phone, but still allows us to stay in touch. So we want to talk about TOL Connect today, where it came from, what it is, why we started it, and how you can be part of it. And I hope this clarifies for those of you who are interested in joining what the possibilities and the features of this look like. Cameron, over to you. Give us a little bit of a background in your thinking and where this is coming from and what you're looking forward to about this, and we'll build it out from here as we go.
Definitely. I'm very much looking forward to it. I think that this has been a request probably from the very start, Nathan. We were getting emails immediately saying so much more could be said on a given topic. Let's say Christian nationalism or something along those lines. And people have been asking us for a discussion forum where we could work through those ideas with other people and maybe other TOL listeners. So,
well, can I interrupt you there a second? I think the reason that this works well for a podcast like Thinking Out Loud is that lots of podcasts and plenty of other of your online interactions, engagements are filled with people who are happy to tell you exactly what to think about something. Those of you who are frequent listeners know that oftentimes by the end of a podcast, you have a lot of your own thoughts, and we're really just trying to get the ball rolling in your mind of you having these as legitimate conversations in your homes and your places of work and your church, with your actual community around you. So we're sort of bringing up ideas and pulling in resources and references, but very rarely do we get to the end of the podcast and I think, wow, we really, wrap that up and put a bow on it. And so all of them feel incomplete to me by design, just because usually we're touching on topics that like we're going to solve, like, the Middle East problem in 23 minutes on a podcast. Probably not. But that means that there's a lot more that could be and should be said, and that there's a lot of wisdom baked into those who are listening and following and thinking along with us that we ourselves could really benefit from. And so Thinking Out Loud as a podcast naturally lends itself to some healthy and robust continuing conversation around some of the topics, because, hey, sometimes we get stuff wrong. Cameron and I don't agree with everything that the other person thinks. We will get into the tone of how we have that disagreement and what the foundations and principles of that are. But I think that's one of the reasons why we're uniquely set up to do this type of online connection well, compared to other sources that are just like, here's what you think, don't ask any questions and sit there and take it. So anyway, there's a little rabbit trail. It'd be weird if we didn't have a
Definitely looking forward to learning from all of you as well. We already do when you write to us and our inboxes fill up, but this is going to take that to another level. But I think also, Nathan, so we don't resolve everything in these podcasts, and that is by design. And I want to make a distinction that might be splitting hairs, but I think it's important. So you often hear people say, well, this is a conversational podcast, or we just really want the dynamic to be conversational in tone. But I actually don't think our podcast is conversational. I think what we're doing is having a discussion. And I think there's a difference. Conversation is a bit too casual. Now, I'm not saying that Thinking Out Loud is formal. It's not. We're not sitting here with a script in front of us or detailed notes most of the time. But we are pursuing a topic And there may be some rabbit trails here and there, but we try to pursue it with focus and with rigor. And in my experience, Nathan, people they really do crave more discussions. And they want a place to be able to talk about some of these more complex issues because increasingly, our society is quite polarized. But I think we find that you might watch something on the news, might watch some people on MSNBC or CNN or Fox News, take your pick. And you'll see a lot of yelling and a lot of screaming. But more and more of us are discovering that one-on-one or in smaller groups, lots of people are hungry for complex discussions and they want to have these kinds of discussions. So it's a wonderful thing. So and pursue them with some real rigor. So I think part of what we've tried to model with this podcast is how to have those kinds of discussions and how to talk about some of these potentially polarizing topics in a way that's measured and doesn't take feelings entirely out of the equation, but really that's guided by ideas. So I think we'll talk more about this in a second, but I think part of what's important here is when we are in these discussion forums, we're able to talk about ideas and we're able to separate ideas from persons in a way so in other words, we can go after an idea full force without lapsing into character assassination, which is so often what happens and what I think deters a lot of people from having these serious conversations. So I think that discussion piece is important.
When Cameron and I worked for a different organization, there was a marketing firm that had listened to some of our interactions, and they said, well, we're not really sure about your style because really to grow a podcast, you need to have fear and anger. And you guys have this more like nuanced, balanced Christian perspective on thing, but they're like, nobody's scared or angry by the end of your podcast. So we don't really know if it's going to work. And so there you have it. I mean, that's the world that we live in. And so we are not looking for everybody to join this discussion at all. In fact, we recognize that this is a super niche thing. That would be for the people who would like to listen to a podcast that's informative about applying Christian ideas and hope to actual life and not be terrified or angry by the end of it. So, I mean, I say that sort of tongue in cheek as if that's a small sliver of society right now. But on the other hand, in our lived experience, it does feel like a very niche kind of audience and form of engagement. So that's what we're after. So we're looking for that tone to be continued in the conversations that we have online, which is a historically extremely difficult thing to do. And so we're inviting you into this on the basis of the type and the style and the tone of interaction and treatment of other humans and ideas that we have toward each other, and we expect you to have and share with us as we grow in Christ likeness first and foremost, and then go on from there to discussing well with each other. So the means and the method and the message all have to fit together for us to have integrity, and we're hoping to see that modeled. I will say, Cameron, I know I cut you off there, but I will say, as I talk about not interrupting people, I will say that one of the things that impresses us so deeply about the emails that you guys who are listening and working along with us here on thinking through these things send us, incredibly well written, precise, concise, thoughtful, heartfelt but articulate, and to the point and direct, that really engages with the heart of the idea and a real desire to like, how do I live well in this context with this set of ideas? Those are really encouraging to us. And we hope that those of you who join TOL Connect will be able to hear some of that wisdom and share your own insight and learn from the other people that are kind of the constellation of ministries and ideas and personalities and lives that are all bonded together around the common experience about thinking about some of these ideas at the same time together. So that's one of the things that really gets me excited, just the quality of interaction that we have with people through email and on the street, and then being able to connect you guys to each other. That's what TOL Connect is about for us.
Yeah, and you're so right about those emails. What's always stood out to me is not only that they're well written, but that they really are pursuing thought rather than feelings. And I think that'll be clear to most of you listening. I've been involved in a number of different discussions, as Nathan has as well, with different organizations and on different forums. And I have to say that most of those discussions are predominated by feelings. Now, I am not anti-feelings. I'm a cognitivist. I happen to believe that there is intellectual content to feelings. All right. And I think thought doesn't happen without feelings. So that's a whole little footnote there. So I'm not denigrating feelings and emotions, but many discussions, as you know, are over usually are a little bit, the judgment is clouded by lots of strong emotions, which then begin to
Mm-hmm.
kind of crowd out the ideas. And that's what I've always been impressed by, the emails, which are clearly pursuing an idea, and they are very thoughtful. They're all about thought. So really appreciate
Mm-hmm.
that. Now,
Yeah.
what I said earlier was that many times we find that people are eager for these discussions, and when you actually have them in with one-on-one or in smaller groups, discussions on difficult topics, something like the transgender issue or Christian nationalism, or on and on we could go, that it's a pleasant surprise. But that said, it's also been my experience that many people, including those of you who write into us, don't get to have conversations like that very often,
Yeah.
because
That's the
you either
bummer of it.
don't feel
Mm-hmm.
safe. Yeah, I mean, you either don't feel safe bringing it up just yet. You don't want to push people, or you don't want to risk alienating somebody in a conversation. I remember somebody putting it like this, and this was years before social media, and I can say this because I'm old now. I just turned 40. But saying to me, Cameron, you enjoy these wonderful philosophical discussions you have. I was a philosophy major undergrad. Enjoy them because, and this was a very thoughtful person I was working with at the time, retail. And she said, because once you get out of college, and then she had this kind of sad look in her eyes, those conversations go away. You don't have them anymore. And people don't want to talk about that stuff anymore. And I remember thinking, that's awful. That sounds devastating. I don't ever want to come to a place in my life where I can't have these deep conversations anymore. But I've discovered many people do indeed feel that way. And so that's another key motivation behind a discussion
Mm-hmm.
forum connected to TOL. It's our humble little effort to bring some of you guys together to continue these discussions, and pursue thoughtful kind of discussions on these major issues, and let that continue, and also provide a place where it's safe to do so. I'm trying. How many ways can I avoid saying safe space? But I mean, a place where
Well,
an environment that is conducive.
yeah, no, the people that we're interacting with are not worried about what other people think. Like, they don't need a safe space for themselves. But I think one of the best ways to articulate, I heard a young man recently said, I just don't have serious conversations with anybody anymore because there's always something that's going to be wrong with it that bothers them in some way. So I think holding back from what we are legitimately wrestling with is not done for our own safety. It's done for just our inability to find other people who can handle us disagreeing with them, push back thoughtfully, and help us shape and form a more precise understanding of reality on the other side of that. So I think that's a good way to balance that out. Let me also say this. Why is it called TOL Connect? Why is it Thinking Out Loud Connect? Everybody, so we're kind of like taking polls, like, what do you think this thing should be called? Community pops up all the time. I think the word community is way overused. And because I'm a curmudgeony young fellow, I think that geography is an essential component of actual community. And so, for the sanctity of the concept of community having geography attached to it, um, I didn't want us to have an online discussion forum that had the word community in it. Now, I hope, and this would be like Nathan's ideal dream, that someday we would have ways in which TOL Connect and our online conversations and discussions could then manifest themselves in actual physical places where, like, hey, we have this many people living in and listening in Austin, Texas. Let's get everybody together for the weekend down there and spend a weekend together doing a little mini conference, a little TOL live kind of thing. So I hope that this does lead into building out in-person events, but let's not confuse ourselves that having an online discussion is not an actual community. The reason that we ended up with TOL Connect is you can thank Seth Showalter. We're calling him out. Seth is the guy who runs our Mighty Networks platform, which is the platform that hosts TOL Connect. And he was doing some research and algorithms and running around and came up with the name. He said, I think in order to encapsulate what you guys want to do without using the word community, TOL Connect. I think he also used some like AI generated search lists there to come up with possible alternatives as well. He's a sneaky one, that Seth Showalter, and you'll meet him on TOL Connect. But anyway, purely came out of the mind of Seth Showalter. So We'll blame him for the name and give him thanks and credit for that. But this is the other reason that I wanted it to be called Connect and not Community is this. And this is going to be a hard thing to say and to articulate in a way that isn't a little bit stepping on toes. We want to have robust discussions about big ideas. There are some things that will be going on in your life if you join TOL Connect that are so important that you shouldn't share them on TOL Connect. And that is not because we don't care, but because we think that those issues are so important that they need to be worked out in the context of your own Christian community. So we're not starting a K-Love style prayer chain. And it's not that we don't care and that you guys you might connect with each other off the platforms and formats and all that. That's fine. But fundamentally, we're going to orient this around and try to keep it to the topic of conversation based off of the ideas and issues that are brought up that touch us all and we're all interacting with and trying to live faithful lives in our culture. So again, this is not because we don't care about your prayer request, but we think that you need to have people praying for you who actually know you, that you sit beside in church on a Sunday morning, or legitimate, tangible geographic community is the best place for you to work some of these issues out. And we'll let you know if we think that you're crossing the line into trying to use us as a church, because we are not your church. And that's one of the things that's distinguished us from the beginning of Thinking Out Loud is we serve at the pleasure of the church, and we're radically pro-local church. And we think you need to be part of one and being ministered to and feeding in one and growing in one and helping it grow, and giving and contributing and being part of that. And so we would feel terrible if there is any temptation in your mind to start using the connections that you make through Thinking Out Loud as a substitute for any type of real in-person fellowship. So I'm going to say this to you because we love the church and we care about you. Don't do that. This is not the place for that. So that's not meant to sound scolding. It's put there as a safety mechanism for you and for us not to misuse the depth of the connections and discussions and relationships that we have in an improper way. So there it is. I don't know if there's a spoonful of sugar to go along with that, but we'll keep that in the back of our mind as we're having these discussions and thinking about what it is that we're actually forming here. It's a wonderful connection and discussion forum. It's not a community. It's not a church.
Yeah, and this is also a way to ensure that there's focus in the discussions on the forum as well, so that we're pursuing those ideas. We really do. We're going to be pretty ideas centric in the way I'm phrasing all of this, because that's what we really want to do. We want to look at the ideas, we want to look at the news items, and we want to pursue them in a thoughtful manner. So it also helps to keep everybody on topic and focused in those conversations as well. And if you've ever worked at all with any kind of moderating in an online forum setting or a discussion forum setting or just in a live setting with people, you'll know that keeping everybody in a room or in an online space on topic can be quite a challenge. It's a hefty challenge. And so this is one of those ways that we can ensure that as well.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a little bit of fun here too. Because sometimes you guys send us hilarious stuff that we'll want to pass along and share with a broader audience. And so I think there will be some giggles involved here too. But it is true what Cameron is saying, that we've built this sandbox with a very specific audience and group in mind and a style of behaving and interacting, engaging in a certain set of unapologetically, theologically conservative orthodox ideals, heavy emphasis on discipleship and the teachings of Christ being a forming way in which we engage these ideas. And so you're invited to play in our sandbox on those terms. And if you pee in the pool, you'll be asked to leave. And that's, I'm not saying again, we'll see. Or if you pee in our sandbox, I guess you'll be asked to leave. Either way, it's saying that again. I don't know why it sounds like a bad cop here in this. It's getting worse. I don't want to sound like the bad cop here, but I do want to say that we do have boundaries put in place here, and we're inviting you to be part of this. And it's on the terms of the tone and the style and the belief structure of Thinking Out Loud that people are invited into this. So this is not a free-for-all. And I think by having some clarity and boundaries and a recognition that we are adopting a certain set of values, which you'll see on our website when you go to the TOL Connect tab on toltogether.com, that you'll see those guidelines outlined there. But again, it's not because, like, the reason that we were slow in rolling this out is because we recognized we'd have to kick people out of it at some point. So just don't be that person, and that'll make our lives much easier. but we can't let one person ruin the whole playground for everybody else. And so we will be mindful and monitoring that as we move forward. Cameron, do you
Yeah,
have a
and
better
that might
metaphor?
be a
Save me.
let's leave the metaphors behind for just a second. And I think that's a good segue into, I think the two things that I want to talk about here are, the order's a bit different, but since we're on this sort of in this unpleasant territory for just a second, let's talk about what can get you kicked off.
Oh,
And
yeah.
let's talk a little bit about the rules. Yeah, because we've got to have some rules here. Of course, we got to have some protocol. We don't think this is going to be a huge issue, or that we'll need to have too many, serious meetings here. But we do
Welcome
need
to
to
the
cover
first day
this
of
as
fourth
well.
grade, everybody.
Right. Yes. So let's set out the classroom rules. How's that for a semi metaphor?
Do it.
Yes. So I mean, I think nothing here will come as a surprise to any of our listeners. It was said earlier by Nathan as he was talking about that marketing firm that we've been told on no uncertain terms that hope doesn't sell, crankiness sells. Well, we're firmly committed to hope, and we're firmly committed to a hopeful tone, and we're firmly committed to civility and kindness. Now, of course, I'm not saying niceness, I'm saying kindness. Kindness doesn't preclude confrontations, but it needs to be done in a loving way. So, with that said, if there's any kind of abusive behavior, if there's foul language, if you've been asked to, repeatedly by Nathan or myself or Seth to refrain from a certain discussion, or if you're being too hard on somebody, yes, we have the right to remove you from the discussion forum. And also, we want to we want to be courteous. As with any situation, some of us are more talkative than others, and that's fine. But let's do our best to allow other people to respond as well, and just not flood the forums with tons and tons of posts so that other people are either intimidated or overwhelmed. So we just want to practice common courtesy. I think all of this is fairly common sense. None of this would come as a surprise. Am I leaving anything out, Nathan?
No, well, I think so other than the size and the amount of time that we spend posting things on there, also, generosity on response times to things as well. You might shoot me a message and I might be gone for 5 days speaking someplace and not respond for 5 days. And that's not because I don't care about you. It's just that I'm doing other things at the time. And so you should live your life where you prioritize the people in front of you over other projects. And so by us modeling that in our lives, if I'm speaking at a university someplace, I'm not going to be responding to your question about where did Cameron get that book reference from on that particular Thursday night.
Sure.
And so that's not an excuse for apathy but it's just saying there's some realistic limitations to how much people can be engaged. So don't take that as a personal insult. We're going to throw all of our stuff out there in front of when you post something, you're throwing it out there in front of everybody. So this is where we can really use the resources of the community there to help answer some of the questions that I don't have any idea what I'm talking about. Cameron hasn't read the book yet. You guys have read another news source article. You have a reference to something. I think one of the ways in which the TOL community is community. I use the word community.
You
TOL,
did it.
the people that I connect with through thinking out loud are helpful to me. Like when I'm writing talks and I need ideas or, references. And so there's a lot of win-win-win here when this is used correctly, because we get to kind of poll you guys on everything from podcast topics to resources for talks that we're working on, even to project ideas. And so you don't think of TOL Connect as a place where you go just to interact with Nathan and Cameron and to ask us questions. It's a place where we very well might just as often come back and ask you questions and for resources and help, and expect somebody else who's just listening in on the side to jump in there and set us both straight. That's what we're looking for, is a round table, not a spoon feeding of each other kind of thing back and forth in that way. So having the proper expectation of who's going to respond to you and what the time frame of that is also one of the things that helps this run well.
So how does it work, Nathan?
Okay.
How do we?
Yeah. So let's talk about some logistics here then. So here's the thing. When you look at TOL Connect, and you can connect on that through our website, you'll see that there is a paywall to this. And you might be saying, now, why in the world is there a paywall to this? Well, first of all, we tried to set this as low as we possibly could in order for it to still pay for itself. At the end of the day, we have to keep the lights on. And so, and we wanted people of all economic stripes and flavors to be able to participate in this. So, access is granted to TOL Connect for people who give a recurring monthly donation of $5 a month or more, or an annual gift of $100 to Thinking Out Loud to the total overall ministry. And we set those there because we think we can run this at that budget and make it work, and that it can cover its cost and support some of the work that we're doing. And then also invest in the help that we have hired to keep it running, and then the software in the background stuff that needs to happen to keep the lights on is the best way to put that. Also, so there's a feature to that of you're becoming a donor to Thinking Out Loud, and then you're granted access into TOL Connect and an invitation into that by becoming a recurring, repeated, or significant donor to Thinking Out Loud. So you're supporting our broader work in ministry when you're doing that. The other reason that is there, other than just the pure logistics of it, is part of protecting the group as well. And so it's kind of throwing a little bit of an anti-troll feature in here as well, that we think a few dollars a month isn't much more than you would spend on a cup or two of coffee, or I don't know what your vice is. But the other thing is this isn't for people who are just passing by who want to jump in and comment on the bottom of a YouTube video. This is for people who want to maybe get to know each other a bit more, and be more personal and vulnerable within the context and the confines and the boundaries of kind of the established parameters of how we want to engage on this platform. So the price point, sorry that it's there, and thanks at the same time. If you want to give us more than $5 a month, that's great too. We'll put it to good use and buy more books and food for our kids and stuff. But the overall feature there is that it needs to be self-sustaining, and that it needs to have some boundaries and a paywall to it, just to make it exclusively for the people who are committed to this set of ideals. And so that's the background. I love free things. I hate charging for things, but at the end of the day, math is a moral issue. So there's that. How do you join? If you go to TOL Connect on the toltogether.com website, you'll see a tab there, and the full instructions are there listed out for you on how you become a donor to Thinking Out Loud, and then what the follow-up step is to receive an invitation into TOL Connect. And then you'll receive an invitation, set up a short little profile so we know who you are, and then Seth will help you get integrated right in, and off and onward and away we go, listening and thinking out loud together. I guess we'll be typing out loud together some also when you're in there.
Typing out loud together.
Anyway,
yeah.
Typing out loud together. What else, Cameron? You have a final word of encouragement or wise word for us here?
Oh, lots of pressure. Well, no, I think we're very much looking forward to this. Again, it's something that you've been asking about for a long time. And so, yeah, we hope that also, one thing that we do hope that this leads to. So we're assiduously avoiding the word community, right? Because we want to honor what real robust community is. But one of our hopes for this is, of course, that it does lead to some actual face-to-face interactions. And we're hoping that we know we have listeners in surprising places all over the United States, but also we have international listeners as well. So thank you. But we're hoping that
17% of you, to be precise.
17% of you. That's right. We're behind the scenes looking at the data. But I tell you, we would love to, for this to lead to some meetups where we actually, get to shake your hand and talk in person, and so have some real one-on-one interactions, which we very much value, and I think that is entirely within the realm of possibility here. So I think that's one of our larger hopes when it comes to TOL Connect as well. But
these are things we've been doing in the past 3 years and are looking forward to sharing with more people. And so this is just expanding, opening the door a little wider to encourage more people to get involved and connected. And what we hope is a very helpful thing in your personal discipleship and in your goal to live out your Christian faith well. And it's a little bit, you know who we are, a little bit of a call to all the Christian bookworms, geeks, nerds, people who use words like Cameron. This is for people who want to be thoughtful, not just in the realm of ideas, but want to take those ideas and figure out ways to actually live them out in their lives in their families, in their real communities, in their church, culture, countries, wherever you find yourself in the world, and put the good news into action. And so the win for this at the end of the day is that it's a place where we can ask genuine, heartfelt questions, throw ideas out there, even if they're a little wonky, maybe they're even wrong, and find a Christian fellowship that can help us clarify some of our thinking and point us to good resources and to cheer for us and encourage us as we continue um, the Great Commission in whatever part of whatever way God is asking you to be a faithful presence in the world. We want to cheer for you and throw our shoulder and behind your work and give a little more energy to what it is that the Lord's already asking of you in this world, and help you brainstorms ideas, if not. So any time that you put God's people together in any type of connection, wonderful things can come out of that. And so this has been our experience in the past, and we hope that I'm confident if the Lord's in it, that it'll be something that's a real blessing to you in your life, in a place in which we can all inspire each other to live lives in such a way that at the end of the day, we all hear, well done, good and faithful servant. That's where we're headed with all of this. And it's a joy in life when you can find other people who want to pursue Christ in the same way. And so we thank you who have been listening to Thinking Out Loud already and engaged already. And we look forward to meeting those of you that we haven't yet. But this is an invitation. Please come and join us. Hop on toltogether.com, look for the TOL Connect tab, and contribute to what's going on in this little slice of the world where we're focusing on living out actual, legitimate, realistic Christian hope. If you're listening to this as a podcast, you've been listening to Thinking Out Loud, podcast where we think out loud about current events and Christian hope.
Thanks for listening to Thinking Out Loud. If you'd like to learn more about what we do, book Nathan or Cameron, or if you'd like to support us financially, whether through a one-time donation or on a monthly basis, you can do so on the donate page at www.toltogether.com. That's toltogether.com. And please consider leaving us a 5-star rating and sharing this content with your friends. It really does help.